everyone, welcome back to another video. Thanks for tuning into this one. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about a reading journey that I have recently been on, and I call this a journey and not a challenge because I think it's going to take me probably over a year to get through it. It's quite a lot of books. But as you all know, COVID-19 has disrupted all of our lives, and a lot of people have gotten sick, a lot of people have died, and it's been just a global tragedy that has affected every single country around the world. And one of the side effects that COVID-19 has had on all of us is that it has limited our ability to travel to places outside of our hometown. I know quite a few countries and quite a few states across the United States are starting to open up. People are able to resume parts of their daily lives, but traveling abroad, going to a different country, just doesn't seem possible for the foreseeable future. To give you guys a bit of detail, travel to me was a very important part of my identity. It was what I looked forward to. If I ever had a trip planned, it was something I was super excited about for months beforehand, before all of this happened. And I think what I really love about traveling internationally is just the ability to meet people from different cultures, to understand perspectives that are very different from yours, to understand lifestyles that are very different from yours, to try amazing new food, and to just see terrain that you may not be able to see in your daily life. And I just find that whole process quite beautiful, and I really, really enjoyed it. To give you guys a bit of context, before COVID-19 really disrupted everything, which began affecting me in my hometown largely in March of this year, so the year before that, so March 2019 to March 2020, I went to Sri Lanka, I went to Hong Kong, Cambodia, Malaysia, Singapore, Turkey, Spain, India, the UK, and Ireland. So I think that's 10 different countries in the span of that 1 year, and that was just such a blast. I had such a good time going to all those different places. So when COVID-19 hit, and it became clear that travel was not going to be possible for the foreseeable future, that was something that really hit me like, wow, that's something that I really look forward to and something that really means a lot to me that I suddenly can't do for, at first I thought it was maybe just a couple months, but it slowly became clear that this is not going away for a while, and traveling internationally would probably not be a responsible decision for a good chunk of the future. I don't know how long this will last. So as that became pretty quickly quite clear to me in the first couple weeks, and as I was thinking about it and feeling quite badly that that was happening, I began to think about how are some ways that I could mitigate the way I was feeling and still try to somewhat engage with different cultures, still try to engage with new perspectives, understand how people in different countries think about life and the world around them. And I thought the best way to do that, obviously, of course, is through books and reading. And so I began to think about how can I frame this as something that is more legitimate than just me trying to diversify my reading tastes, and something where I would be forced to reflect and keep track of the different countries and perspectives that I was reading about. So I decided to frame it as a challenge for myself, and I'm calling it Around the World in 80 Books, and obviously inspired by Jules Verne's Around the World in 80 Days, which is a book I really like but find quite problematic, and I'm happy to make another video talking about that book because it has really impacted me a lot, but there are things about it that I don't feel so great about, so happy to do that later if you guys are interested. What I'm essentially trying to do is read 80 books by authors from 80 different countries, and when I say different countries, I am typically staying with the UN classification of a country. I feel like that's probably the best way to do it, but I am also obviously staying open to countries that may not officially exist but are inhabited by people of a very different cultures. I think things like that are also important to include and still should count as a different country if the goal is just to understand different perspectives. So that's kind of how I framed this for myself, and I'm not really being too steadfast in my rules. Like, if there's a book that I find really, really interesting and it doesn't exactly fit the parameters that I'm trying to stay close to, I'm still reading it because I think it will add something to my knowledge and to my understanding of a different culture or perspective. So kind of to give you guys a bit of context on where I'm at right now, I've read about 23 out of the 80 books in that journey. How I'm going to be framing this series is doing a 10-part series of videos. So this is the introduction video to the challenge, and then every 10 books I'll do an update video in which I'll just list out which 10 books I read and which countries they're from, and just kind of frame up for you guys what I'm doing, and then maybe go into depth into a couple of them that really stood out to me, books that I find really interesting, books that I highly recommend you should read. So since I'm at 23 already, you can expect the next 2 videos to be update videos. So it'll be the intro, 8 update videos to get to 80 books, and then a final video in which I will talk about my overall reflections, what I learned from this journey, what it helped me do, which I think will be a lot. I think books have given me surprising insight into how different people think, how different cultures approach life and think about life, and it's already had such an impact on me, so undoubtedly it's going to have even more of an impact moving forward. And I did want to talk a little bit about my process for selecting books. So I really still try to stay true to my whole concept around reading, which is if there's something that I really want to learn about or some thought process I really want insight in, that's what I'll try to seek out. And how I've framed that in the context of this challenge is if there's something about a country that really strikes me as interesting, some specific event or some aspect of a culture in a certain country that I find particularly interesting, I will try to find a book that somehow gives me insight into that, and that could be nonfiction or fiction again. So the example that I'll give here is a book that I read for Sri Lanka, which is the book Wave by Sonali Deraniyagala, and totally apologize if I mispronounced that, tried my best. I'll put a picture of the book right here so you can take a look. I don't actually have it with me right now, unfortunately. But anyway, in March of last year, I actually had the opportunity to visit Sri Lanka, and while I was there, I met a lot of people who talked about the 2004 tsunami natural disaster that happened there, and it was very apparent that this disaster had had a profound effect on all the people that I met. And this was in 2019, so it had been 15 years since this had happened, but it was still so fresh in everyone's minds. And I just found that really interesting, but I didn't really have the chance to have a proper conversation about how this natural disaster had affected a certain individual. So it was something that was still on my mind quite a bit once I returned from that trip, and I decided to use this opportunity to actually delve into it a little bit. So I came across this book, which I purchased from an independent bookstore, and it was just a really interesting insight into this one woman's life who had the devastating loss of her entire family due to this tsunami. Her husband, her children, and her parents all tragically passed away because of the tsunami, and just kind of understanding how she went through the grief process, how she tried to find closure and tried to move on from something that just totally threw her life for a loop was a really fascinating process, and I think it answered a lot of questions in my mind on how this event that I had seen having an effect on people but couldn't quite grasp what that effect had been, how that had happened. So that was just one example, but that's kind of the process that I go through for selecting all of these books. It might be, again, as I mentioned, a certain event, it could be a certain aspect of the culture, it could be a certain person that I want to learn about, pretty much anything. So it all starts with a question that I have about a certain country, and then from there I try to find a book that will help me answer that question. So anyway, that all goes to say I hope you guys are excited to join me in this process. If you're also interested in doing this challenge, I welcome you to do it as well. I think it is already helping me to diversify my understanding of the world and somewhat fill the void that COVID-19 has left in my heart, that I can't travel anywhere. I have not dealt with this illness personally yet, and I understand that just not being able to travel internationally is a very privileged thing to say, and I'm really thankful that this has not affected my family or myself yet. and it would just be very irresponsible of me to travel and just try to fulfill these desires or wants when so many people are suffering in the world. So I think that books have helped me to prioritize my mental health and something that really means a lot to me while still doing the responsible thing as a citizen of the world. So yeah, I think this is going to be a really fun challenge over the course of the next few months, maybe the next year. I don't know how long this is going to take, and I'm excited to be sharing it with all of you. And of course, if you have any recommendations of books from other countries that you have really enjoyed, please feel free to leave those in the comments. I found so many books for this challenge through BookTube, honestly, and just watching people's videos on different interesting books that they've read. So if you have any suggestions, please do leave them below. So yeah, I'm super excited, and I will be sharing a video shortly in which I discuss the first 10 books that I read and some of the standouts in that list. So thanks again for watching, and please come back to the next video. If you like this video, please leave a like or comment, and as always, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I will see you next time, guys. Bye!